let's get right into it. So I personally have been quite passionate about D&I for a long time. Now I've learned a better acronym, and so today I want to talk about JEDI mind tricks to build better products. Our goal as product managers is to build products that our customers love, right? And chances are your customer base is actually very diverse. And while you don't want to build for everyone, we do should have some sort of awareness of the impact that our products can have. And hiring a diverse team is a great long-term strategy, but most of us in product, we don't hire, we don't fire, we don't really have that kind of power, and maybe you want to do something that's a bit faster. Depending how you look at it, Star Wars may or may not be the best example. I grew up with it. When I look at the JEDI, I see quite a lot of diversity, so I personally like it as an example. But also, why am I actually talking about JEDI, you might ask? So let's dive into that new acronym. It is just short for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And you can also see in this little picture that we have right there that there are differences between those things. You might have heard of some of them or all of them. I'll just go quickly through the definitions. Let's start with the ones that you most likely already know, which is diversity, which kind of describes all the differences between us based on which we then experience advantages or actually encounter barriers to opportunities. So it's not just racial differences. There are lots and lots of different dimensions. And then inclusion actually means to foster a sense of belonging by centering, valuing, and amplifying the voices and perspectives and styles of those who usually experience more barriers based on their identities. All right, I know that was a lot. There are two more here. Equity means that we need to be, or that we should be allocating resources to ensure that everyone has access to the same opportunities. So equity just actually recognizes the advantages and barriers of, the different isms that exist. And then justice goes even one step further and means dismantling those barriers to resources and opportunities in society so that all individuals and communities can live a full and dignified life. So that's why all of these are important. So here we got a great Yoda quote, deceive you, eyes can, in the force, very different each of you is. And I think that actually describes it pretty well when we think about diversity, because there are a lot of different dimensions, as I said. Often gender is one of the first ones that comes to mind, and maybe race, and then it's already kind of like, what else is there? And it's also important to understand the intersections of certain experiences. A Black woman will have a different experience than a Black man or a white woman. I'm a white woman, so I got a lot of privilege, and I have a university degree, for example. I did not have the best socioeconomic background to actually get that university degree, but that is something we can see. And that brings me to the dimensions of diversity that we can think about. This is just one example, but the idea behind this iceberg is that there are dimensions of diversity that we can actually see, that are visible, like race or maybe physical ability, sometimes religion, age, sometimes gender, although that's not a guaranteed one. But then there are also other dimensions that we can actually see, like maybe sexual orientation or general beliefs, personality traits, culture, skills, background. As I said, not an extensive list, just to give you a bit of an idea. And so now we kind of got the basics down, I would say. And I have fairly recently learned something very, very important. And that is the concept of designing with the people and not for the people, or building products with the people and not for the people. It is so easy to think that we know best what our customers want. Maybe we talk to a few of them. Our own biases get in the way. Maybe we have confirmation bias. We only hear what we want, or maybe we've only talked to people that are kind of similar to us, right? So we shouldn't overestimate our expertise. We're definitely the experts on in the technology, but our customers are actually the experts in their own lives and their own needs and their own pain points and their own desires. I've learned this from Teresa Torres. She has a really great talk about this that you can check out on her page, where she goes into more detail about this as well. And there are way too many bad examples of products and things that have been designed for people, but not with them. I'm pretty sure you've all heard about the different facial recognition fails. I think it was 2017 when a Chinese user said that an iPhone 10 or X at the time, the face recognition was all new and it couldn't tell them apart. The son unlocked the phone, like his mother's phone, with his face. In 2020, there was a case where a faulty facial recognition match led to a man being arrested for a crime that he did not commit, and that happened to be a Black man. So that's where that facial recognition was flawed. And there are tons of other examples. There's also when it comes to medical fitness tech kind of things, there was a blood pressure or pulse measuring thing that didn't work on people with darker skin tones and would give wrong numbers. Fitbits and other wearables are often not accurately tracking heart rates in people of color. Facebook had those in 2016. They had this targeting option for advertisements that people or companies use to exclude people based on race. So basically, Facebook assumed, based on the data that they had about the person, if they were Black or Hispanic, and then advertisers for universities or loan giving companies or whatever, credit companies, would exclude people from their advertisement because they didn't want those people to apply. So that was actually very actively, if you think about all of these examples, I think it's quite clear that if they would have had a person of color, a Black person on their team, this might not have happened. I think one of the most famous examples is NASA sending a woman to space for a week and giving her 100 tampons. So clearly there wasn't another woman on that team probably, so nobody actually noticed. And that's the thing, since, as you might remember, I said we can usually not hire a full new team and make sure that we have all kinds of people on that team. It's on us to actually start thinking of these things and being better. Yoda's probably the smartest guy in Star Wars. And he said, you must unlearn all you have learned. And that's the part that's on us. We need some cultural changes to improve long-term hiring and then diversity with it. But the question is, what can we do right now? So unlearning is one of the things, and it's not that easy, but I want to show you a tool that I've used in the past that some friends of mine came up with to look at where you're at right now. I'll zoom in a few parts of this, and I'm happy to share the template link later. This is something that friends of mine came up with. They are called The Six. They work in San Francisco and all of the US, and they've been running this for a while, and I've run it with a couple of teams. They call it the Privilege Canvas. And the idea here is to just get together as a team and look at your status quo and be vocal about who is represented and also who's not represented within your team. And that way, this can, here's an example. I'm not sure if you can all read it, but there are some things in there belonging to the majority culture, being addiction free, not having mental illness, identifying as male, being of good health, being able to go on vacations. And there's like a whole list of things, and also room to add your own when you're in that workshop situation. And this really helps to start a conversation about this. Because for a lot of people, if they've never thought about their privilege before, it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. But I think it's important, and it can help us and give us the base to actually get better at asking ourselves and our teams what kind of impact we're having on other people. And this will train our empathy and also help us to slowly create a more inclusive environment, because we're starting to think of equity and justice, and even just on the diversity and inclusion already, not just as an afterthought, but straight away. It's like it becomes part of our practice, and it gets baked into like the process. Speaking of process, let's just quickly look at how do we actually build new products or new features. Just very quickly. I think you're mostly all product people who have done this probably 1 or 2 times, or maybe more often. Simple steps. We do discovery work, we ideate, we prototype and validate ideas, and maybe not prototype, but definitely validate. And then with whatever we hear, we'll like go in and build and ship whatever we have heard about, and then we learn. And then we kind of go around in a circle. You kind of see like this is kind of like the lean methodology, but then also like design thinking and agile kind of thrown in there, like whatever you're using to build products, it doesn't matter. But there are several points in this whole big process that we can actually make more inclusive. I love this quote: your focus determines your reality. And that's the thing. If you just don't think about diversity, inclusion, equity, and all of those things when building a product, you might only notice once you've shipped it, or maybe you'll never notice because you just exclude people and you'll never know about it and you're missing out. So what can you do right now? You can go in and evaluate which of the steps that we just talked about are not inclusive at the moment. And you can take the time and think about your impact on several dimensions. And I want to get like very, actionable now with you. I collected a bunch of questions that I personally find helpful to make sure I don't forget about things. Let's say, I'm in the beginning, I'm maybe starting with market research. So I can ask myself, like, what's the impact that I have on maybe small local businesses with this new product that I'm building, maybe a new app or something? Am I actively including Black or queer-owned businesses? Like, do I have broad representation of groups when I look at the market of something? So that's like in the first part, am I leaving someone behind? Ask yourself, like, what is the worst that could happen if this app becomes wildly popular? Like, do I have a negative impact on someone? And then when you do your user research, who are you actually talking to? Like, do you have white representation in the interviewees? That might make recruiting a little bit harder. And I know sometimes it's not easy to find people to talk to when you do user research. But, it's important. What about the facilities where I do it? I know at the moment, most people are probably doing user research online over video. But also there, like, is it accessible? What if I do it in person? Are the facilities where I do user research, for example, wheelchair accessible? Could I interview someone who's visually impaired or hard of hearing, or, tons of different things that you might want to think about. What about the compensation for the interviews? Am I actually being fair here? Because like, we're usually getting a lot of value from those interviews. And that might actually make us millions of dollars or euros or wherever you are. So are we being fair in the way we compensate? When we then kind of, create personas or something along those lines, do we fall back on stereotypes? Do they only represent majorities? When we're doing ideation, who's in the room? Who are we listening to? Is it the old white guy who's probably also the hippos, the highest paid person's opinion? Who else is there? And when we're validating assumptions, if you're a Marty Kagan fan like me, feasible, usable, viable, valuable might ring a bell. Those are the risks we're kind of looking at when validating ideas. Maybe add ethical to the list. When we create prototypes and test those, is the prototype itself accessible? Those might be small things like contrast, language. What about people who are maybe not super good at reading, dyslexia? Can they still use our prototype? Do they need to read a lot? Who are we testing with? And yeah, I'm just going to go over accessibility one more time because I think it's such an important thing that luckily I had the chance to learn from a really great person. When I was working in Canada, we had a person that was dedicated to basically educating all development teams on accessibility. And so for me, some of the things are not afterthoughts anymore, which is really, really great. And I'm so thankful to this person for teaching me these things. Contrast is something that's very easy to do, but also very easy to oversee. Do videos have closed captions? Did you think of people who might not be super comfortable reading really long and complicated words? Maybe you can make things easier. But also there might be an intentional exclusivity, like, luxury items, scarcity, something that's iOS only. If that's what you want, that's okay. I'm not saying you should never ever do that. But I'm saying is, kind of think about it. What about internet access? All those things. Something very easy that you can do if you have any type of product that is web-based that you're working on. Go to the DevTools in Chrome and look at Lighthouse if you don't already do that. They have some scores on performance and SEO, but also on accessibility. They give you a bunch of very easy things that you can do right now. So yeah. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. Now in this scenario, all of you are Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because we can only make a difference if we all do it and not just one person. And so I just want to quickly go over the key takeaways of the things that we can actually be doing straight away, or that you can start tomorrow or maybe on Monday. So remember, we want to design with them, not for them. We kind of want to understand and check where we're at the moment to make it very obvious what's still missing or whose perspective we might be missing. Train your empathy, because that's something that's a muscle we can train and we should. So try to kind of just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and start with the little things. You don't have to move mountains straight away because sometimes that's just not possible. None of these things should be an afterthought. We should bake them into the process so that they're always top of mind and that we don't even really need to think about them anymore at some point. And what I want to leave you with is it is more important to get started than to be perfect. Thank you. Fred is coming back. Yes, he is.
I'm going to check if we have any questions in the chat. Beyond user testing, how can you involve customer in the whole product lifecycle?
Yes, that's a great question. So user testing is usually kind of like the easiest, fastest one that we can all think about. But I actually try when I work as a product manager, or if I coach product managers and talk to them, you should just regularly speak to customers at all times. I think Teresa Torres recommends 2 people a week that you should just talk to. And I like to use like a kind of jobs to be done based, very loose interview outline for these kinds of interviews, and just talk to people and understand their situation, what maybe made them purchase my product, or what made them also like leave my product, depending which part I kind of want to look at in that moment. That should align to your goals, product goals, OKRs, whatever you're working with, so that you don't if you don't have anything that you can align it to, it's fine to just like have very, very open interviews. But if you have bigger goals for the quarter, for example, it might make sense to kind of align your questions to those goals.
Okay, thank you. Another question: what are some good resources to get started on accessibility?
Yeah, as I said, for me personally, Lighthouse is probably my very first go-to. I find it very, very helpful. I know that the Envision blog has some good posts about accessibility as well that are really interesting. So those, I think, are 2 good starting points. And also just Google. There are tools out there that where you can upload screenshots, for example, to give you the exact contrast and which ones are too low and those kinds of things as well.
Thank you. And yeah, just like the question was on accessibility, and it's something, yeah, I think we don't really think about, but there might be also consequences, because I've been working with a brand, and not looking after your accessibility might also have legal issues. So that's something, yeah, like they like not thinking of those people, they can also have consequences, financial consequences for you later. So something that, yeah, you need to, I think that's a good start, and raising awareness about it and working with the people. Yeah, thank you. Another question. So was in B2B, doing inclusive research is much harder. What can I do?
Yeah, B2B. I feel like every type of research is a lot harder in B2B because a lot of the time we have much smaller customer pools. I can speak from experience here. I used to manage a product that was for small business owners in Poland, and those tend to be majority demographic is white male for small business owners in Poland. And I mean, I wouldn't want to try to have like a 50-50 split of men and women, because I'd still, to be realistic, and I still want to continuously talk to people. But I will always try to also speak with like a lot of women, people of color, for example. I've talked to some people who actually immigrated to Poland, and for them, a lot of things were quite different. And that was really enlightening for me in that moment when I talked to them. And those were things I would have missed out on if I had just been like, well, it's the first 5 people that said I can interview them are white guys, so that's what I'm going to go with. So it will definitely take a bit more time, and you kind of have to find a balance. And as I said, don't try to find the perfect combination. Just start. It's better than nothing.
And do you find it easier to get your user engaged in B2B or B2C? Like, which one do you think is more open to interact with you and be part of the journey you're offering them, opening to them, like, come and help us bring that
Yeah.
product? Where do you think you?
I feel like in B2C, you usually have a much larger pool of people, but they don't really care that much. While in business, you have fewer people, but a lot of the time they will care a little more about the tools that they use. So I've mainly worked with small businesses in all the B2B areas that I've worked in. And they tend to be very happy to share their knowledge and help you out, make your product better, because they are also usually very close to their customers. So they kind of get the idea when you tell them, hey, I'm just trying to understand how to make your life easier, because like that's literally what I'm here for. That's my job. Maybe you can tell me about your life, and then we can find ways to make it better with my app, my e-commerce store, like whatever it is that your product is.
Thank you. One last question. Like when you join a new team, how is it for you to deliver your message and make them aware of what you just presented to us, like that they need to be more open and looking at diversity? Is it something that, have you find that it's easier now than a few years back, or do you think that the company are still, it's still difficult to carry that message and say like your product needs to be, like you said, you work with them, not to them. You don't. So
I think it very much depends. So I think there's definitely generally more awareness that has come through the past few years when it comes to diversity and inclusion. But I feel like at least in Europe, a lot of it is more about hiring and not so much about how you develop your product. So that's still kind of new. And when I start working with a new team, this is usually not the first topic that I march through the door with, because it can come across as like a bit condescending or patronizing when you're just like, oh, hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. Are you actually being inclusive or not so much? Obviously, I wouldn't say it like that, but it can be an uncomfortable and also intimidating topic. So I definitely think I wouldn't just go in and kind of like barge in with that topic. But I do think it is important to quickly start talking about it. Maybe not start with the privilege canvas, because that is a workshop tool that does need some trust between people. So that might not be the first thing I do, but it's also, as I said, like some of the dimensions of diversity are quite visible. So maybe, and a lot of people, if they come from different places, for example, like when you first meet them, they will tell you their name and they will happily tell you where they come from because they're proud of their heritage. So you already have a first idea about maybe some different backgrounds that you have in your team. So some of the dimensions will get known to you maybe earlier than others. And I think it's okay to slowly kind of build up on the diversity things and introduce more dimensions that we should look out for, or intersections, and also share experiences. I've mostly worked in quite international teams, so a lot of the time we just have people from all over the place. So that was always something where I was lucky to already have fairly diverse teams on that dimension. Something else is that I am trying to look out for this now when I'm looking for jobs. So I've worked in tech for a long time, so it's been more than once that I was the only woman on a team, or that the team was just all white people. And but it is possible, if that's something that's important to you, which to me this is just like a topic that I'm very passionate about. So I'm actually trying to look at diversity, and I will ask about it, and I will ask about it in a slightly uncomfortable way, because if people back down, then I know that they're not actually doing the work that they might be talking about. I know not everyone is in a privileged position to do that kind of thing and choose their employer like that. I luckily am. So I think that's also something that has helped me to come into more diverse teams, and then it's a bit easier to make that next step to talk about how our product should be more inclusive.